Pacific War was the theatre of World War II that was fought in Asia, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and Oceania. It was geographically the largest theatre of the war. The Imperial Japanese Army and Navy were formed in 1868, and the IJN soon rose to be the third most powerful navy in the world at the start of World War II, after the Royal Navy and the US Navy, with a force of 12 battleships, 15 fleet carriers, 5 light carriers, 5 escort carriers, 18 heavy cruisers, 25 light cruisers, 169 destroyers, 180 destroyer escorts, 12 sea-going torpedo boats, 9 sea-going gunboats, and 195 submarines. The Pacific War itself began on the 7th of December 1941, when the Japanese invaded Thailand and attacked the British colonies of Malaya, Singapore and Hong Kong, as well as the United States military and naval bases in Hawaii, Wake Island, Guam and the Philippines. In this documentary, we're going to be finding out how the Pacific War finally came to end after 4 years of suffering for all the people across the Pacific. The date is the 1st of April 1945 and the Japanese are on the retreat. The US and their allies have been island hopping their way up the Pacific and have now crushed every last pocket of Japanese resistance across most islands. Today US forces begin their assault on Okinawa, the last island before the Japanese mainland. For the troops waiting in the landing craft and on the assault ships, they know that this will probably be their last ever Easter Sunday. They remember the blood spilled on the previous island, Iwo Jima, and know that their friends will probably die along them. Unusually, as the landings begin and thousands of troops pour onto the sandy beaches, the Japanese seem to be non-existent on the island, even though intelligence suggests there is up to 130,000 Japanese troops on the island. The Marines cautiously move, expecting an ambush. Several days after the invasion, they run right into one. US forces come under attack suddenly by heavy mortar and machine gun fire. Many men are killed instantly. The US realise they have run into the Shori Line, a fierce network of defensive tunnels and machine gun emplacements. Meanwhile, off the coast of Okinawa, swarms of Japanese kamikaze planes suddenly appear on the radar of the US and British destroyers. The carriers scramble all their planes, thinking it is an aerial attack, not a kamikaze. However, they were wrong. Chaos soon breaks out when multiple ships are hit and sunk. The Japanese crashed over 1,900 planes during the Battle of Okinawa in kamikaze dives off the coast, sinking a total of 126 ships and damaging 64 others. Back on Okinawa, the Shori Line seems to be impenetrable. This is because each machine gun or mortar is covered by another mortar or a machine gun post. This stretches from coast to coast, making it a bloodbath for US Marines on Okinawa. The Shori Line seems to be concentrated at a place nicknamed Sugarloaf Hill. US Marines try to storm up it but are shot to pieces by Japanese machine guns. Eventually, the American troops had no other option than to use flamethrowers and grenades to burn the Japanese troops out. Progress is slow and agonizing. However, the US forces have now reached the capital of Okinawa, Naha, and can see the end of the island and the sea. The commanding officer of the invasion, Lieutenant General Buckner, was inspecting a forward observation post when a Japanese shell hit close to him and almost left him dead. As he was slowly dying, a Marine private held out his hand and said, "You're coming home, sir, you are homeward bound." Now the US troops have flushed out every last bit of Japanese resistance they could on Okinawa. They could finally now rebuild air bases and use Okinawa as a staging ground for the planned invasion of the Japanese mainland, Operation Downfall. An invasion of Japan would be very costly. President Truman is considering a different option. A team of scientists in the middle of nowhere in the American desert have just dropped a big metal ball that is potentially the most dangerous thing in the world. It's the world's most powerful bomb, the A-bomb. Codenamed Manhattan Project. This is the culmination of 6 years' work and it comes down to this moment. It's a success for now, but the scientists and engineers have still got to figure out how to drop it out of a moving plane onto a Japanese city. This could be the only option in stopping the Japanese, who have the attitude of no surrender and that surrendering is dishonourable. date is set for the 5th of August 1945. All the engineers and scientists can do is wait and hope that this will stop the Japanese. The Enola Gay's mission starts from Tinian in the Marianas. The crew has their final briefing on weather and air-sea rescue. Only yesterday, they had been told the true power of the weapon they are to carry. The massive bomb has been loaded. At 2:45 in the morning, 6th of August 1945, Colonel Tibbets takes the Enola Gay down the runway into the air, beginning the 6.5-hour flight to Japan. Over Iwo Jima, they begin the slow climb to bombing altitude. At 8:15, weather reports from Hiroshima reports that conditions are good. As they approach the target area, the weapon is checked for the last time. At 9:11 in the morning, 31,000 feet over Hiroshima, the Enola Gay begins the bomb run. At 9:15, the bomb is dropped. The aircraft banks away at high speed to avoid the blast. Just 50 seconds later, 15 miles from ground zero, the Enola Gay is rocked by the blast. It is that powerful. On a sunny morning on August the 14th, 1945, a voice never heard before on radio waves is broadcast across Japan. It's the Emperor. He's talking about the war. Moreover, the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking the toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. Indeed, we declared war on America and Britain out of our first desire to ensure Japan's self-preservation and the stabilization of East Asia, it being far from our thought either to infringe upon the sovereignty of other nations or to embark upon territorial aggrandizement. But now the war has lasted nearly 4 years. Despite the best that has been done by everyone, the gallant fighting of our military and naval forces, the diligence and assiduity of our servants of the state, and the devoted service of 100 million people, the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, while the general trends of the world have all turned against her interest. This is the moment Japanese forces surrendered on the battleship USS Missouri.
The U.S. battleship Missouri in Tokyo Bay was the setting for the signing of the surrender terms which officially brought the war with Japan to an end. General Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander for the Allies, joined Admirals Nimitz and Halsey and other top commanders aboard the Missouri September 2nd, 1945. The ceremony took place on a Sunday. Foreign Minister Shigemitsu and other representatives of the Japanese nation on the deck of the battleship, even as the world recalled that other Sunday in '41 and the act of treachery which shattered the calm of the Pacific Ocean and the world. Now at last, defeated Japan and the Allies were to sign the surrender terms.
The terms and conditions upon which surrender of the Japanese imperial forces is here to be given and accepted are contained in the instrument of surrender now before you. As Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, I announce it my firm purpose, in the tradition of the countries I represent, to proceed in the discharge of my responsibilities with justice and tolerance, while taking all necessary dispositions to ensure that the terms of surrender are fully, promptly, and faithfully complied with.
First to sign the surrender document was Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu for Japan's emperor. Articles in the surrender terms included the following. All provisions of the Potsdam Declaration were accepted. All armed forces were surrendered unconditionally. Acknowledgement that authority of the emperor and the Japanese government was subject to the will of the Allied Supreme Commander General Douglas MacArthur, now signing. The first pen became a cherished memento for General Wainwright. The second pen went to Britain's General Percival. In order, the nation signed. General Su Yung Chang for China. For the United Kingdom, Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser. General MacArthur called on the representative of the Soviet Union, Lieutenant General Kuzuma N. Derevyanko. Also the representative of Canada, Colonel L. Moore Cosgrove. In all, there were 12 signatures affixed to the surrender document, and then in 20 minutes it was over. Nearly 4 years of bitter conflict had come to this brief ceremony. The war chapter was closed, and a weary world looked hopefully to new horizons of enduring peace.
After the official Japanese surrender was announced to the public, there was immense celebrations. Clement Attlee, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, announced a day of celebration and said the famous quote, "The last of our enemies has been laid low." People were out celebrating all night and into the next day. But for the families of the 111,606 dead and 253,142 wounded, they would never forget the loss or injury of their children and family, and the people who fought in it would never forget the scars it left behind. But there's peace in the Pacific, once again, for now. Troops, fleets and squadrons can begin to come home and celebrate with their family their amazing victory over Japan.